Have you bought this adorable chicken crochet kit from Target? Are you completely confused by the instructions? If so, know that you're not alone. Throw the instructions away and watch this tutorial instead. So this is everything that you get included in the kit. The important thing to note about the crochet hook that's included is that the size that's printed on it is wrong. So it says it's a 4mm at this end and a 3mm at this end. However, this end is closer to a 2.5mm and this end is more like a 3mm. So just keep that in mind if you want to use this crochet hook again for a different project. If you're using the hook that's included in the kit, you want to use the end that says 3mm. And I also suggest maybe putting a little bit of coloured tape or something on this end to remind you when you're picking up your crochet hook which end you're working with, so you don't accidentally switch between the two ends while you're working. So for this tutorial, I'm going to use my own hook. This is my Clover Amour 2.5mm. So if you're also using your own hook, make sure to grab a 2.5mm. To start the body of our chicken, we need to do a magic loop. So to do a magic loop, hold your yarn tail facing down in between your thumb and first finger, and then wrap the yarn around your two fingers, underneath, and then over the top and across, like so. Then take your crochet hook. You want to go under this first piece of yarn, hook the second piece of yarn, pull it through and twist it up. Now you want to grab this piece of yarn here and pull it through the loop on your hook as a slip stitch. And there's your magic loop. Now for row 1, we want to do 6 single crochets into the magic loop. So to work into the magic loop, instead of inserting your hook into a stitch, you just insert it into the middle of your loop and then single crochet as normal. And because this is our first stitch, we want to use our stitch marker to mark that stitch. Marking the first stitch of your round is really important when you're working in continuous rounds, so that you can count your stitches and you know when you're at the end of your round. So that's our first single crochet. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then you just want to pull on your yarn tail to close up your magic loop. And you should have something that looks like this. Now for row 2, we're going to do 6 increases. So that means in each of these 6 stitches that we've done in the first round, we are going to do 2 single crochets. So by the end of round 2, you should have 12 stitches. So that's our first single crochet, so we want to move our stitch marker. And then because we're doing an increase, we're going to do a second single crochet into the exact same stitch. And then again into the next stitch, we'll do 2 single crochets. So 1, 2, and then just repeat that around, and at the end of round 2 you will have 12 stitches. For row 3, we're going to alternate between single crochets and increases. So into the first stitch we'll do a single crochet. And then into the second stitch we'll do an increase, so 2 single crochets into the same stitch. And then into the third stitch, single crochet, 4th stitch, increase. We'll do that 6 times in total, and by the end of row 3 you should have 18 stitches. Then for row 4 we're going to do 2 single crochets and then an increase. So single crochet into the first stitch, single crochet into the second stitch, increase into the third stitch, and then repeat that pattern around 6 times, and by the end of row 4 you should have 24 stitches. Then for row 5 we're going to do 3 single crochets followed by an increase. So single crochet into the first stitch, single crochet into the second stitch, single crochet into the third stitch, increase in the fourth stitch, and then repeat that pattern around 6 times, and by the time you get to the end of row 5 you should have 30 stitches. Now for row 6 you're going to do 30 single crochets all the way around, so just 1 single crochet into each stitch, and by the end of row 6 you should still have 30 stitches. Now for row 7 we're going to do 4 single crochets and then an increase, so single crochet, single crochet, single crochet, single crochet, increase. Repeat that 6 times and have 36 stitches by the end of row 7. Then for row 8 we're going to do 36 single crochets all the way around, and you should still have 36 stitches by the end of row 8. For row 9 we're going to do 5 single crochets followed by an increase. We'll repeat that pattern 6 times, and by the end of row 9 you should have 42 stitches, and for row 10 we'll do 42 stitches all the way around. For row 11 we're going to do 6 single crochets followed by an increase, then we'll repeat that pattern 6 times, and by the end of row 11 you should have 48 stitches, and then for rows 12 through to 15 you'll do 48 stitches all the way around for each of those 4 rows. So I'll meet you back here once you're at row 16. Okay, once you've finished row 15, now is a good time to embroider the eyes of the chicken on. So you just want to grab your black yarn. One option is just to do it single-stranded and tie a knot in the end. If you do that, you just need to make sure that the knot is really big and bigger than any gaps in your work, because you don't want the knot to accidentally come through a hole in your work. But I'll show you another approach that's a little bit more secure. So you want to take your yarn and fold it in half, and then we actually want to thread both ends of the yarn through your tapestry needle, like so. So at one end you'll have a loop, and at the other end you'll have 2 loose tails. Now in terms of placement of the eyes, so I suggest where your rows are starting and ending, where your stitch marker is, you probably want to have that at the back of the chicken, just because sometimes there's a little bit of a visible seam where you've started and ended your rows. The other thing to make sure is that you've got the right side of the work facing out. So when you are working, your work has probably had a tendency to curl in this way, but this is actually the wrong side. So to tell which side is the wrong side will have your initial yarn tail from your magic loop poking through, and if you see, it just looks a little bit bumpy, a little bit crowded, and almost a little bit more matte, whereas if you flip it through the other way, the stitches just look a little bit more defined and a little bit shinier. So you want to make sure that the right side of the work is facing out. Now in terms of placement of the eye, I would suggest going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows down. And so you just want to come in through the back of the work, but just don't pull the yarn all the way through. So make sure you keep a loop poking out the back side, and then you can kind of make your eye as big or as small as you like. I'll probably do mine maybe 2 stitches down. So just go back into the work and pull it through. And then what you want to do is flip your work over. In this initial loop that we made at the start, you just want to put your needle through that loop, and then you can pull it tight, and that will keep your work nice and secure. There's our first eye. I prefer just having lines as eyes, but if you want them to be a little bit more rounded, you can just do a couple of smaller stitches either side to make more of a circle shape. And then to make the second eye, we just want to come over about 4 or 5 stitches. Pull it all the way through, and then 2 stitches down. And then once you're happy with your eyes, to secure our work on the back here, just generally like to put my needle under one of the stitches, pull it through, and then insert your hook into this big loop. So again, it creates a knot. And then to make it extra secure, you can just pull your tapestry needle off and then knot these two together as well. This will all be hidden inside of the chicken, so it doesn't matter if it looks a little bit messy. Now you can trim this off if you like. You can also leave it loose because we're going to stuff the chicken, so this can kind of just form part of the stuffing. Now the other thing that you want to do at this point is to weave in this initial tail from your magic loop, and that's just to make sure that your work doesn't come undone. So just thread this tail onto your tapestry needle, and then to weave it in, we just want to weave in and through our stitches to secure the yarn. So generally you want to work in the opposite direction of the initial magic loop, although this isn't critical if you can't quite remember which way around you were working. And you just want to weave your needle in and through about 4 or 5 different stitches, and ideally you want to work in at least 3 different directions. And then again we can leave that yarn tail free because we're going to be stuffing our chicken. Now our eyes are done, but we'll do the rest of the details of the chicken once we've finished the body. Okay, so now we're up to row 16. So for row 16 we're going to do 4 single crochets and then a decrease. So I'll show you how to do an invisible decrease. So firstly we want our 4 single crochets. Okay, so once you've done your 4 single crochets, we're going to do a decrease as our next stitch. So to do an invisible decrease, you want to insert your crochet hook under the first prong of your next stitch. So typically when you're doing single crochet, you go under both prongs of the V like so, but we just want to go under the first prong only. Then you want to swing your crochet hook down so that you can get your head under the first prong only of the second stitch. So now you should have 3 loops on your hook. You want to yarn over and pull through 2, and then yarn over, pull through 2. And that's a decrease, and that's just a way of turning 2 stitches into 1. So now you want to repeat that pattern, so 4 single crochets in the next 4 stitches, then in the 5th stitch do another decrease. You want to do that 8 times in total, and by the end of row 16 you will have 40 stitches. Then for row 17 you want to do 40 single crochets all the way around. Okay, our little chicken is starting to take shape now. So for row 18 you want to do 3 single crochets followed by a decrease. You'll do that 8 times and have 32 stitches by the end of row 18. Row 19 is 32 single crochets all the way around. Row 20 you want to do 2 single crochets and then a decrease. So single crochet, decrease. You'll repeat that 8 times and have 24 stitches at the end of row 20. Row 21, you just want to alternate between single crochets and decreases. You'll do that 8 times and have 16 stitches by the end of row 21. I'll meet you back here at the end of row 21. Once you've finished row 21, now is a really good time to embroider the little feet on the bottom of the chicken. So to do that, you want to grab some of your orange yarn. Be careful not to get too much because we need to save most of the orange yarn to make the beak and the comb. Now the simplest way to do this would just be to thread a single strand onto your tapestry needle and tie a big knot in the end. The risk with this approach though is that if the knot isn't big enough, it can actually come through any gaps or holes in your work. So I'll show you another way which prevents this from happening. Now they do include a tapestry needle in your kit. I'm going to use my metal needle though because this one is quite hard to embroider with. It's got a really wide head which makes it hard to pull through your stitches. Now, so what you want to do is actually fold your yarn in half and then thread both ends onto your tapestry needle. So then at one end you should have 2 tails and at the other end a big loop. Now, so we've only got one more row to go on the bottom of the chicken and that will close up the end here. So this is basically the bottom of the chicken. I think it's good to sew the feet maybe 2 rows up from the bottom, just so that they're visible when the chicken is standing up. And you just want to line the feet up with your eyes. So come in through the back, but be careful not to pull all the way through. You want to leave this loop hanging out the bottom here. Then you want to go down 1 stitch on a diagonal. And then once you've done that first stitch, you actually want to take your needle and go through the big loop that you created at the start, and then pull that tight. And I'll just flip the work through so you can see what that does. So if you pull that tight, that then creates a nice secure knot. And then next you just want to come back up 1 stitch over from where you started, and then come back down on a diagonal into the same gap that you stitched the first foot into. And then to do the third foot, just 1 stitch over and down into the same gap. And there's your first little foot, and then you just want to repeat that under the second eye for your second foot. Okay, and then once you have done the second little foot, you can just remove your tapestry needle, and then you can actually just knot these 2 pieces of yarn together. And again, because we're going to stuff the chicken, you can just pop the yarn ends inside. So once you've done the feet, now is a good time to stuff your chicken. So just grab some of your polyfill and stuff it in. And once you're happy with the shape of the chicken and the squishiness, then we want to do the final row, which is row 22, which is just 8 decreases all the way around, and then I'll show you how to do an invisible close. Okay, once you've finished row 22, you should have an opening that looks a bit like this. So now we will do an invisible close. So you just want to cut a decent sized yarn tail. Then we want to fasten off, so to do that, just want to pull your yarn tail through the loop on your hook and pull it all the way through, and then pull it tight so it creates a knot. Now to do an invisible close, we will thread the yarn tail onto our tapestry needle, and now we're going to work in the front loops of these last 6 stitches of our last row. So the front loops are the ones closest to you. So I'm going to go under this first front loop here, and then under this front loop, all the way around. Then you can just pull on the yarn tail and it will cinch up. And now to secure this, we just want to weave it in. So you can weave it sort of under your stitches, and again, just like weaving in any ends, you just want to go in a few different directions. And then to hide the tail, what you can actually do is go into your chicken and then pop out somewhere else, like so. Pull the yarn all the way through, and then you can just snip this tail off as close as possible to the edge of your chicken. And there we go, there's the body of our chicken done. So the next thing to make are the wings. So to start the wings, we want to do a slip knot, and then chain 6. Now we're going to work into the second chain from our hook, so we ignore this first chain and work into the second chain, and we're going to do a single crochet into that second chain. And then into the next chain we're going to do a half double crochet. So to do a half double crochet, you're going to wrap your yarn over your hook before you insert it into the stitch. I'm going to work into this next chain, yarn over, pull up a loop. You should now have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. Then into the next 3 stitches we will do a double crochet into each. So double crochet, you yarn over your hook before you start the stitch, same as a half double crochet, into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2. We'll do 3 of those total. So into the next stitch we'll do another double crochet, and then into this last stitch. Now we just need to fasten off, so you just want to cut a yarn tail. Again, just leave a decent amount of yarn for sewing your wings onto the chicken. And then to fasten off, you just want to pull the yarn tail through the loop on your hook and pull it all the way through and pull it tight to secure. So now you want to repeat that to make the second wing. Now we're going to make the chicken's little comb. So for that you want the orange yarn. Again, we start by doing a slip knot, and we want to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then into the second chain from the hook, so we ignore this first chain here, work into the second chain. We're going to do a half double crochet. So again, just yarn over, insert your hook into the middle of the chain stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on your hook. Into the next stitch we're going to do a single crochet, and then into the next stitch we're going to do a slip stitch. Then we're going to chain another 6. Now we're going to work into the third chain from the hook. So this is our first, this is the second, this is the third here. And into that stitch we're going to do another half double crochet. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. We're going to do double crochets into the next 2 stitches. Then into this next stitch we're going to do a single crochet, and then to finish off we're just going to do a slip stitch back into this very first stitch that we did, just to close up the comb. Then we just want to cut off a yarn tail, pull that yarn tail through the loop on your hook and all the way through. There's our little comb for his head. Now the last piece to make is the chicken's beak. So again we want the orange yarn, and we're going to start this with a magic loop. So as a reminder, you're going to hold your yarn with the tail facing down in between your thumb and first finger, wrap the yarn around your 2 first fingers underneath, and then cross over the top, so you have a cross like so. Take your crochet hook, go under this first strand, hook the second strand, pull it through and twist it up, and then we just want to hook onto this strand here and pull that through as a slip stitch. There's your magic loop. And now we're just going to work 6 single crochets into this magic loop. Once you've done your 6 single crochets, you just want to pull on your initial yarn tail to close the loop up. And now to complete the loop, we're just going to work a slip stitch back into the original first stitch. So you just want to insert your hook back under this first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then pull through the loop on your hook. And then we want to fasten off. You can leave a slightly longer yarn tail than you may normally do, just to make sure you've got enough for sewing the beak on. And then to fasten off, you just want to pull through the yarn tail all the way and pull it tight. And there's our little beak. So that's all of the parts of our chicken. Now we just need to assemble them. So to assemble each piece, you just want to thread one of the yarn tails onto your tapestry needle, and then just figure out where you want to place each of the parts. So for the arms, I'd suggest you want them fairly high, maybe 1 or 2 rows down from your eyes, and then you just want to make sure they obviously line up on both sides as well. So pick where you want your arms to start and insert your hook, and then you want to come out on the other side of your stitch fairly close to where you worked originally. Then that attaches one part of your arm. Then you can sew it on through your stitches. Like so. Now if you want your arms to be super secure, you can also repeat the same thing with this other yarn tail. Now to hide this yarn tail, again we can just go back into our work, pop out somewhere else, and snip that off. And then you just want to repeat that for his second little arm. And next we want to attach the comb, so again just thread one of the yarn tails onto your tapestry needle. Now we want to attach the comb to the very top of the chicken, so I'm going to go in here through the very first row, and then I'm just going to go through the middle of the comb and secure it down on the other side by going under another stitch. Right, just do that one more time. And again, pop through anywhere else on your chicken. And if you're a little bit poking out like this, you can just kind of work so that this little end pokes back into the chicken. And then you just want to hide this last yarn tail. And now our final piece to attach is the beak. Now we're actually going to attach the beak so that the circle is sitting flat on the chicken, so that the loop, the hole in the middle here, is basically the inside of its beak. So I suggest actually sewing it on mainly just in the middle so that it kind of puckers up and looks a bit like a beak. So to do that, I suggest you kind of weave your needle in until it's sort of near the center of your beak. And we'll also go back through so that we are on the wrong side of the work and we have the right side of the work facing out. And then we can just insert our hook right in between the eyes so that that is secured in the middle. And then you could sew around to secure the edges, but I think actually you kind of want the circle to stick out a little bit so it looks like a beak. So I suggest you just go back in under where you came out and then pull this through. Again, with this last yarn tail, I suggest going in basically under the middle of the yarn beak and all the way through. Now, as a final little finishing touch, the chicken has little blushing cheeks. So the way to do that is actually just with a little bit of blush. So you just want to take some blush and a fairly stiff makeup brush. Find cream blush works a little bit better than powder, but I've only got powder and sort of the right rosy pink shade. And then just brush it on. And there we go, there's your adorable little chicken. I hope you found this video useful. Let me know in the comments if any part of this pattern is still stumping you. Also, if there are any of the other Anko DIY mini crochet kits, or any crochet kits really, where the instructions are unclear and you're struggling to follow it, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more info and inspo for new crochet makers. Thanks for crocheting with me today, and happy crafting.